Mendelssohn Opus 33, number 16. I'll play it with metronome, and then I'll go back and teach you the finer points. All right. So, what are the lessons? The lessons are to be very, very careful about how you get up to the third register. Every 3 notes in each grouping go from the low register to the third register. In order to achieve that, you have to increase the speed of the air without increasing the amount of air. This is the contradiction that's proposed in number 16. The dynamic marking state piano, then you crescendo to the top F. Once you get to that held F, then you crescendo and create as much of a singing, spinning vibrato as you can to get your maximum sound. And then you start the diminuendo on the C 16th note, and that note should have the same energy that you left with your spinning vibrato. So in essence, it's kind of like a Moïse exercise in that we are focusing on how we manipulate the tone. We start very softly, not with a percussive attack with the tongue. You can start very gently with no tongue or with the lightest tongue to create the sound. With air, we increase the speed of the air to get to the high E, but we are very, very careful not to add more volume of air so that it's loud. Let me explain even further. For beginner students, the way that they get high notes is they just blow more air. They go like this. As you can hear, it has a very negative effect on everybody's ears that are nearby. No, it has a negative effect on intonation. When you just add more air, the direction of the air and the amount of air that you're putting into the flute is not controlled. In many cases, when you just add more air, it's really unfocused tone and it's loud. As you can see, the direction of the air lifted a little bit, and that uncovered the embouchure hole, which made it a lot sharper. So instead what we do is you can keep the amount of air the same, but just increase the speed or the pressure of the air. And you can do that in a number of ways. There are several dissertations that have been written throughout the years discussing all the various, not all, but a lot of the various different ways that flute players do their techniques. For my students, I've always said, in Germany they say one thing, in France they say another thing, in America they say another thing, and they keep blaming each other left and right about who's right and who's wrong. The truth is, in the 21st century, if you really want to become a great musician, you need to not be so concerned about which family of flute player you belong to, and more as to what the acoustics, what the science is behind this instrument. So, in order to produce a high note, all you have to do is increase the speed of air and the flute will respond automatically. One way to get the octave is to move your embouchure forward, thereby increasing the speed that the air is hitting the strike edge. That's one way, and it works. Every method that I discuss, by the way, this is only number one, has both the pros and the cons, and it's up to you as the flute player to discover whether the pros outweigh the cons, or whether that method works for you. For some people, the lip flexibility is a very, very important part of advanced flute playing, and I wholeheartedly recommend it. Another way you could do that is by making the aperture, the hole in your mouth, a lot smaller. When you blow air, and the hole is this big, well, it's released at a certain pressure. But if you decrease the aperture, that means that using the same amount of air going through a smaller hole, it will increase the pressure. So that will get your high note too. And there are pros and cons to that as well. The con is if you're squeezing too much of the aperture, you're going to cut off the volume of air. You want to keep the volume of air consistent, and if you pinch too much, then it'll be softer and what people call a covered sound. So the lip flexibility is great. And then, of course, the final way is just to add more air, but to really lip down so the intonation isn't so bad. It takes a lot of physical energy, and it's not my preferred cup of tea. But people have mastered it very successfully. Out of the three, I recommend number one, have lip flexibility. Keep the direction of your air the same. Keep the amount of air the same. Just change the speed by having the flexibility of the embouchure. Move it forward. Okay? Now, I'll set out a blueprint as to what I'm doing for these 2 pages. First thing I'm focusing on, first game, is to play the first 3 notes all quietly and smooth. That's really hard to do, but make sure you do that for each of the starts of each little phrase. So I would practice the entire piece going making sure that my technique of going up the octave is in good condition. If you hear cracks or you hear one of the three notes jump out louder, you're not doing it correctly. Go back to the beginning and start all over again until you can master the entire game. Once you do that, the next game is can you crescendo? Just on the high notes, start quiet, and go to your maximum. Now the danger, especially in the third register, is when you crescendo and you're adding this fluctuation of air, fluctuation of pitch and intensity, the intonation will go wildly sharp. So it's a great opportunity to work on aperture work and flexibility work. If you uncover a little bit, it will sound much louder and much more in control tone-wise without having to force a lot of air. This exercise for me is a nuance exercise. It tests whether my techniques are really worth their salt without forcing. Whenever you feel like you're physically having to force by adding more air or adding more tension, it's not my style of playing. It's the opposite. So I can crescendo a lot and make it really loud without actually adding more air. Sounds like I am, but I've got plenty more air. That was like piano dynamic for me inside. But because of my flexibility and my control of the coverage of this embouchure hole, that's where I get maximum dynamic contrast. So every single one, you can go. Maybe 4 counts. 1, 2, crescendo. 1, 2, crescendo. Okay? Within that, once you control the dynamic crescendo without going sharp, then add your spinning vibrato. 6 at 56, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's great. You can do 72, 5 at 72. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was much better intonation the second time. See, go through the entire piece and just make sure you can do that. Then the third game is the diminuendo exercise, which is to start loud, maybe put a fermata on the top note, the C in the first measure, and see if you can do a nice, beautiful tapered dynamic. A lot of people are afraid. There's this phobia in the flute community of losing your good tone, and so everything is just mezzo forte. It's not loud, it's not soft, it's not supple, it's not nuanced. It's just this blab of this quasi-loud, and they're trying to get that tone throughout every single note. This is a goal, I guess, in one etude in your life, or maybe the beginning when you're just learning. But as an advanced flute player, the whole purpose of music is to communicate. So don't make everything loud and honky and all of that kind of stuff. And don't make it all soft and just without any focus. Focus on maximum sound on exercise 3. If you really want to do double work, do a repeat sign. Do the first time all maximum loud, and then repeat, start loud, and then do the actual written diminuendo. Go through the entire piece that way. So it would be... It's right there. You can work on getting louder and louder as you get older. You can get softer and softer as you get older. All right, guys. And don't miss any notes. Try your best. Happy practicing. I'll see you next time.